I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zeiss Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark.
Hey, folks.
Welcome to our next exciting episode of Linda's Adventures Shattered Star. This time, part 2.
Part 2, indeed.
Whereas we begin the Curse of the Lady's Light. So, when last we left our band of adventurers, we had discovered from Venture Captain Sheila Heidemark that we were part of a secret team that were not being told to the rest of the Pathfinder Society because it had more leaks than, like, a sieve.
Yes.
And the Aspis Consortium always heard about it, that we were just going to find these artifacts that were 7 parts of a whole, and put them together, possibly catastrophically dangerously, but, you know, maybe it would protect us if there was a return of the Rune Lords eventually at some point in the future.
What an oddly specific phrase.
Yeah, well, that's what she said.
Yeah.
Like, more of them might come back, because Karzug had come back. That wasn't good. There were 6 others, many of whom were more powerful. Karzug was, like, in the middle.
Yeah, and, well, Kroon as well. It was something that folks had been having to deal with. I think that may have been slightly later in the timeline.
I think it was before Kroon. It was, like, around the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just...
Good point, David. A group with report in its motto talks a lot.
Yes, a group with report in its motto talks a lot. It turns out that happens. So, anyway, we had gathered this adventuring group, which contained some very up-and-coming first-level Pathfinders who were chosen because no one would notice. Whereas if you chose, like, Seeker, 12th level Pathfinders, everybody would be like, why are all of them in Magnimar doing some kind of thing? Let's pay attention to them.
Yes. So who were these Pathfinders?
Alright, well, we had Marquise Cordelia Perseus, who is a wizard, diviner, foresight diviner, which is a similar divination ability to the Pathfinder 2nd edition one. This is a game that took place in Pathfinder 1st edition. She's from Taldor, and basically is very, very intelligent and wants to use that intelligence to help other people occasionally. Occasionally a bit arrogant as a noble, but really, like, not too bad compared to most Taldan nobles by a lot. Then we had Arian Roan Thriceborn, who is a Fey sorceress, who's a devotee of Mag the Three, the eldest of, like, fate and prophecy, and who is sort of a little bit unstuck in her perception of reality in time, where she sees the past and the future sometimes, in a way that's mostly roleplay, where I just roleplay her as being confused about things based on guesses of, like, how an area would have been in the past, or would be in the future. But also, since these were all characters played in Pathfinder Society Organized Play, could have an amusing shtick when she actually played an adventure that comes after that adventure in the same location, and is like, says things that are just wrong, but would have been true there. It's like, oh, that must be the future.
We played part 4 before part 2 with
that must be the future then. It's like she plays part 4, then comes back to part 2. It's like, we got all of the MacGuffins. Now what do we? No, we're trying to get the second MacGuffin. Oh, really? I thought we got them all. That must be later. This is now, or something like that. So that's Arya. We have Memory of Dreams, who is a Kelid barbarian who is very, very superstitious and very, very wary of magic, despite having many, many magic users in his group, and has a strong oral tradition, but, like, their following, I think, for the Realm of the Mammoth Lords is what you call those groups, like, did not really use writing as much, so that was his deal. But that allowed him to memorize, like, vast amounts of spoken information, And he really likes animals and other creatures that you can try to befriend with the handle animal, and so he tries to protect those animals.
Yes.
And befriend them.
We have running lists for these characters that they developed throughout the adventure. So Memory's got his list of animals that he has befriended and convinced to join with the party.
Yep.
And
I think so far we have Batty Bat the bat and Flotsam and Jetsam the cave moray.
Yes. And then Cordelia has a list of constructs.
Yes, I think so far we have a clockwork servant that she found in the dungeon. But we might actually have more than that by this point. We definitely have a list, and I can't remember exactly.
Fixie the servant.
Fixie the servant.
Have you found Guardy the soldier yet, or Sneaky the spy?
I'm not sure, but we actually probably
I think you
did because the next one is definitely in
this next dungeon.
In this next dungeon, so we may have a clockwork servant, a clockwork soldier, and a clockwork spy.
Yeah, Fixie, Guardian, Sneaky.
Fixie, Guardian, Sneaky. Yes, that's correct. So
she may be a hyper intelligent wizard, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that she's above giving cutesy names to her companion creatures.
That's true. And then we have two more that are the...
So I'm the GM and also playing two of my PFS characters, one of whom is a dervish dancing bard named patriotic Taldan named Lucia. And the other one is Margaret who is an Aasimar from Tianjing who came over to Avistan trying to protect an artifact. And all this other stuff that didn't necessarily come up in the story. But basically, she's our resident cleric of Tsukio, who's a very friendly and helpful person, but other people might not necessarily understand what she's getting at, particularly when she gets her visions.
Margaret is like sort of, it comes off as like her Western name for like when some people can't pronounce your actual name, but it's also an attempt to get people not to question because like, oh, that's what it is. The fact that she's also hiding her real name because she doesn't want people to follow her.
Exactly.
Given the MacGuffin that she's hiding.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a hide in plain sight that everyone's like, ha ha, of course, you're just using this name Margaret because you don't want to deal with people who don't recognize your name, but it's actually a case of a hidden identity as well. All right.
So those are our 5 PCs, and the 5 PCs. One of the things about these shards of the shattered star, shall we say, is that whenever you gain one of them, it gives you a vision and a clue that lets you know where the next one is. So with the last one that the PCs gained, they saw information that let them know that this next one was going to be on a very unusual lighthouse that takes the form of a giant statue of a woman named the Lady's Light. And
the information that it gave was a giant picture of a statue of a lighthouse that looked like the form of a woman, that we could just clearly see that it was that lighthouse, which Cordelia immediately identified as the Lady's Light. It was not like there was a giant research session.
No, it was like,
this one was easier than before.
Oh yeah, this one is just an obvious famous landmark in this area. Let's go there. So as for getting there, they had a couple of choices about how they would reach there. They could trudge through the swamps, or they could see about taking a boat. Mm-hmm. And the PCs decided that they would rather take a boat. So, the
swamps didn't sound very pleasant.
They did not. It's like you could trudge through a swamp for quite a while, or you could just take a boat. And one little complication about boats here is that, like, not that many people sail right up to the lighthouse.
Yeah, that was an issue.
So, but fortunately, Venture Captain Sheila Heidmark has connections, and she said, okay, here, talk to this captain. This captain's on the. This captain is in port right now, and we could probably get her to agree to sail close enough and drop you guys off.
Mm-hmm.
So you were packed away onto a very crowded ship, And which had and there was the crew was there, and there was also another woman there on the ship, Diela Marchim, who was generally keeping to herself and trying not to stand out too much.
Diela sus.
Trying not to let anyone know what her true reason for being on the ship was. Trying not to let anyone know about her murderous intent.
Diela sus.
Diala very, very sus, yes. So Diala had boarded the ship with the goal of murdering one of the members of the crew who was responsible for the death of her young niece. Basically, like, the Justice of Karamaga didn't take care of this, I'm gonna take care of this myself.
I mean, it's Karamaga. I wouldn't be super surprised that the Justice of Karamaga is kind of like...
Not?
I don't know, right? Microsoft Works?
Oh dear. So do you remember what your characters did when you caught her?
So we figured out about this whole situation, and we decided to turn her and her evidence against the crew member over to the captain for, like, the purpose of submitting both of them to justice.
How did you? I do remember that you didn't wind up fighting her, but how did you find her out before she committed the deed?
I think just that, like, everyone was suspicious and was watching and paying attention to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so they realized that she was doing something surreptitious, and so they kind of trailed her to the point where they figured out that she was specifically kind of stalking and paying attention to this one other guy. And at that point, they another group of people, while she was out and about, like, went into her cabin and found some of her other things that provided additional clues. And then when we had enough clues about what we thought she was going to do, we sort of replaced her target so that she thought that we replaced her target with a dummy, so she thought she was going to be doing the murder, but she wasn't. And then we captured her with the aha in the middle of the act.
This is what your group always did.
Yep.
Whenever there was something that happened, it's like you found out, and
aha!
I didn't remember specifically how you found out, but you always did these kinds of shenanigans.
That's right. Gotcha. And then
you can't even have, like, a simple boat ride from one place to another without, like,
obviously
having
not.
some kind of trickery and intrigue going on.
We're not the ones who chose to do that. She's the one who chose to do that.
Clearly.
Yep. Oh, actually, it looks like in the end, we sent Cheb to prison for murdering the niece.
Yes, you did.
But not her, because of the fact that she didn't murder anyone.
Yeah.
We stopped her from killing someone, and we were like, you technically didn't commit a crime, and yeah, this guy is horrible. Mm-hmm. So we were able to trick Cheb into confessing that he killed the niece, where the captain could hear, because we knew the captain would be on the side of one of his own crew members, but we weren't going to stay on the ship long enough to make sure that the captain did what was right, so we wanted to make sure that there were a lot of witnesses the captain...
and you guys didn't stick around long enough to see him getting sent to prison, but I went ahead and gave you credit for having him be sent to prison. We still put him
in being sent to prison on our thing. We let her go, and we're like, do not let vengeance cloud over your heart, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. The power of Shellen and friendship.
The power of friendship and Shellen compels you.
To invade...
And Sarenrae.
Yes,
and Sarenrae.
Yes, no, we had Sarenrae.
And Tsukio.
We had a lot of good aligned deities.
And we had Tsukio.
Yeah.
And we had, Memory of Dreams is following's religious belief, which I made up, is that they have, basically... they have basically two religious leaders. They've got the sun shamans and the moon shamans, and the sun shamans make decisions, religious decisions during the day when you can like look at the sun and divine things from the sun, and this moon shamans make decisions during the night when you can divine things from the moon. So the way that works is that this was a shtick for him as a Pathfinder Society character before his archetype got banned, which is that he would just go to the person, because in most Pathfinder Society organized playgroups, there's someone who's Serenite or Desnant. There just is. And so he would go to the most Serenite/Sun related person if the mission was during the day and was not like Drendel Drang's 2 a.m. one, and like get them to read his faction mission and then ask them for advice on how to on what they thought about certain factors, if there was magic or other things involved. And he would ask for advice from Desna related characters during the night, and that also was a way that like, because sometimes as we know from this stream, I can figure out mysteries a lot or other plot lines, but with Memory, he wasn't the character who probably should have been figuring things out. So he would like bring a clue, but he'd be like, go to the Desna person if it was a night mystery and be like, so I found this clue, what do you think we should do? And so that was sort of his thing. So he definitely talked to Lucia as a sun shaman, and to Masami as
Margaret,
Margaret.
Her name was.
Yes,
actually, but as a cleric. So you had the cleric of the
moon shaman,
of the moon god,
yes,
and the devotee of the sun god.
He just interpreted other characters towards his own
yes,
his own beliefs in the maximal way possible.
Yep.
So that's sort of what he did in those kind of situations.
And now those were some of the main times that my GMPCs weighed in on things, because you had Arya with all her schemes of trickery. You had Cordelia, who was constantly like, using intelligence to plan. Memory was fairly wise as well, so would sometimes be the one who realizes like that they're going pretty far off of what's practical into these schemes, and should like maybe take a step back, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. And then my characters weighed in when they were brought in by Memory. Generally,
if you watch the first episode, nearly all of like the main scheming person who did a lot of the face things was Arya in episode 1. But it's important that Cordelia actually has, in Pathfinder First Edition, it was very damaging to your other ability scores if your wizard had a lot of charisma. But she actually started with 14 charisma and had a bunch of charisma-based skills that she made into class skills. So via a variety of means. So Cordelia is actually also good at that stuff. She just is obviously not as good as Arya, who has like the most charisma, and also all of those things. So we're going to see
Arya of the irresistible enchantments.
Yes, Arya, who believes that if anything makes a saving throw against her enchantments, it's one of the many creatures that is immune to mind affecting, because she doesn't have knowledge to know what's immune to mind affecting or not. So she's just like, oh, it didn't get enchanted, probably immune to mind affecting. In Pathfinder First Edition, even more things were immune to mind affecting or enchantments. But in this adventure, we're going to see Cordelia taking a little bit more of a leading role in some of the areas of duping people. And so let's continue onward, because after that, they dropped us off into the swamp around the Ladies' Light itself.
So you weren't going to be able to entirely avoid the swamp treasury. You just avoided most of the swamp treasury.
We avoided most of the swamp treasury, but there still was definitely some things in the swamp. But very quickly after we were dropped off, we found some kind of like indications we had heard ahead of time from actually the head of the market, Sabria Kalmaran.
Who she had been like, oh, I have a feeling you all might be going to the swamp. If you guys go into the swamp,
which like our thing was secret too, but
if you guys go into the swamp, I'd like you to keep an eye out for various.
I blame Akira Al-Hakam for telling her about our secret mission. Just 100% Akira Al-Hakam.
See if you could get a trade agreement with the
/Quarrel Corella
and the Mushfens. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of the that's one of the running jokes we use for is the reason that information was leaking in part was that the was that the early seasons had the psychic faction leaders that would somehow know what was going on.
It's
in your
got to
nation.
be Akira Hakame and Goro Corella.
Yeah, totally had.
But I still don't know how Ayava found out about it. Like, who is she even connected to?
She just knows.
I guess they do. All right. So that allowed us to know that there was a situation going on in this area around the Lady's Light where there's a kind of huge presence of both Zul'Gath and Boggards, and they were aggressive to each other. They were at war.
Yes.
So we knew about that, and what we quickly found was a place that had like the skulls of both Zul'Gath and Boggards with like warning signs in languages that Zul'Gath or Boggards could read. That was like, if you come in here, you will die, or something like that. And so we were very interested in that because it was probably someone who did not like Zul'Gaths and Boggards. And
maybe they would like to talk to you.
Maybe they would. I mean, most people would like to talk to us, and we were clearly not either Zul'Gaths nor Boggards. So we decided to investigate who was up there in this place. It was near where the ship had let us out.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where we found a was she like a half-orc witch?
Maru.
Named Maru?
Yeah, exactly. Or Moreau. She's half-orc witch for sure.
All right.
And she's got her raven familiar.
Yep. She was a half-orc witch with a raven familiar who was both of them I think were very
And
acerbic.
David said, she might just hate everyone, and those were the sapients that were around. I think
it's
that's
possible.
That's
we
honestly,
considered that possibility.
She doesn't like visitors at all, and that's why she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go off into the wilds where I don't have to deal with people, and then the other sapient creatures that were around, she didn't like them either. She just wanted to be left alone with her and her raven, and that's it.
That's true, and that she doesn't like most visitors, but that's because most visitors are very impolite, obviously.
Naturally.
If you have the social skills and the politeness of a Marquise and a trickster fae combined, then obviously you'll be able to charm some sort of curmudgeonly witch.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly what the group proceeded to do. I think we had to drink her like disgusting soup, or something like that.
Yeah, you had to eat her barely edible stew, which could have made you sickened. As part of accepting her hospitality and not offending her.
Yep. I remember that. We totally did it. And then she also had like a quest for us that we had to go to, I think, to like a sunken ship that had a bunch of skeletons there, and like find her like kelpie grass or some kind of ingredient.
She needed like some kind of seaweed that she insisted that you gather for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she also told you guys that, and she was also telling you guys then about some of the strange people that she had seen around in this area.
Right.
This strange group of armored women with scars that had been walking through the swamp, and who actually came to visit her and bribed her with fine wine.
That's right. And Cordelia drew a sketch of Grey Maiden armor just in case. And that is when Maru confirmed that was definitely who it was. That it was people, it looked just like that armor that you just drew a sketch of, Cordelia.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew it was Grey Maidens.
And you also knew that what she was saying about what these Grey Maidens had told her was like...
It was very outlandish.
Yes.
Because they were talking about... So first of all, quick backstop, Grey Maidens. So Grey Maidens are basically there is an evil queen who tried to take control over not Magnimar, the city that we were based out of, but the other big city-state in the area, Korvosa. Previously the capital of the area when Cheliax was ruling over it as a as sort of a colony. So when she wanted to take over the government, one thing she did, the evil queen, was make her own group, make her own military, and then sort of purge elements of the original military that were not loyal to her, and replace a lot of even the non-purged military with her own people. So the Grey Maidens were a group that were entirely made up of women who the queen thought were prettier than her, who she disfigured and then brainwashed into being her servants, and then forced into ridiculous physical training until they were elite warriors. After she was defeated, what the different Grey Maiden groups did varied wildly because, well, they were brainwashed and tortured. Some groups decided, like, they were very angry about this and were going to help other people in similar situations. Some decided to keep being evil and find other tyrants to serve. Some just wandered off. And Cordelia knew that, and so this was probably a group that just wandered off. This is a really out-of-the-way place that we were in right now.
Yeah.
So, but what they've been saying, if I remember correctly, Linda, was that the Rune Lord Sorshen had risen again.
Yes. That she was
in the Lady's Light.
That she was within the Lady's Light, and they had come to Maru and been like, the great Rune Lord Sorshen has risen again. Come join us in serving her and bringing about her new reign.
Because first they've been like, we're going to explore the Lady's Light, and then they went down there and like, Sorshen's back, join us, serve the great Sorshen. And this was very suspicious to Cordelia in particular for a few reasons. But the main one is that Cordelia was pretty sure, based on intelligence that was gathered by some of the people who defeated the Evil Queen from before in the Pathfinder Society, that the Rune Lord Sorshen was a present threat to awaken, but that if she did, she would awaken from beneath the Grand Mastaba in Korvosa, the city of Korvosa having been foolishly founded around Sorshen's tomb and a giant step pyramid that beneath it housed the dangerous, second most powerful of all the Rune Lords. So to have her arise from the Lady's Light, which is not the right location, is kind of extra suspicious.
Yeah.
So Cordelia was kind of sus. Like, I mean, maybe she arose in the Grand Mastaba and then like teleported to the Lady's Light, but that's not how Akav's Razor works. Yes. So she would have probably wanted to, with her command over enchantment, take control over the giant city that she found when she woke up, that was right next to her.
As opposed to going
instead of going into the middle of the swamp
and
going to an obscure lighthouse.
Well, as Maru put, if you believe that claptrap, there's a bridge across the Straits of Eridan I'd like to sell you.
Yep. We did not believe that claptrap.
You did not believe that claptrap.
That was claptrap that we didn't believe.
That is true.
Alright, so, given that we did not believe that claptrap, we were still grateful to Maru, and she helped tell us, like, a little bit more about, what to expect in terms of the area, just like she had told the Grey Maidens initially.
Yeah.
That there was a kind of a Zul'Gath base and a Boggart base, and that basically you can't get into the Lady's Light from the outside. There's no door. You have to come in from tunnel areas underneath. The only entrances to those cave systems that exist are in the back of either the Zul'Gath or the Boggart area.
Yes.
You just can't. You
either have to go through the Boggart village or the caves that the Zul'Gaths live in.
That's right. And Maru suggested that the Zul'Gaths were in much worse shape than the Boggarts because of recent problems, so they would be easier to get through. So we decided, well, you find, like, some witch who's living in the area, and she seems to know stuff. You should listen to that witch. She probably knows what she's talking about. So we decided to investigate what was going on with the Zul'Gath and what made them being in such a bad shape. Like, could we just kind of mosey on through? What was the deal with this situation? So we marched down through the swamp, and sure enough, we found the Zul'Gath caves. Now, Zul'Gaths, also known as troglodytes, are sort of a lizard-like humanoid that have a horrible stench. They are typically evil, but mainly because of the fact that they are they're sort of dominated by an evil theocracy of evil deities that have really bad ideas of what to do with their society and themselves, including like killing the weak and killing each other, and it's not a great situation for them. So we didn't know what exactly had laid them low, but Maru said that they were in a bad position against the Boggards. And Cordelia had a suspicion that maybe it was because maybe that to get to the Lady's Light, which obviously the Grey Maidens did, and both of these groups still existed, maybe the Grey Maidens had allied with the Boggards and like given them support against the Zolgath. Unclear. But clearly the Grey Maidens went in, did not defeat either of these groups, went out to talk to Maru again about Swordshed, and probably went back in again. So they probably have a safe passage agreement.
With the Boggards.
We thought it was probably with the Boggards, given that the Boggards were doing well. But I mean, it could be that they just killed so many of the Zolgath. The Zolgath were just not even stopping them. We didn't know, but we were gonna go check out the Zolgaths.
Yes, and the Zolgaths, unsurprisingly, were while they were quite demoralized, were not really happy to welcome outsiders into their area.
Yep.
After some
they were ready to attack.
They were ready to attack. They had a barricade soaked in oil that they were ready to throw alchemist fires on to set anyone who was trying to come through on fire.
Yes, they were going to attack us. That was their plan. Sure enough, Evil Priest was still like urging them on. But that was not what we were planning on.
It was not.
So what we decided to do was figure out what was going on with them. So we sent in our stealthiest familiar to scout.
Yes.
And when we did, we discovered the familiar was able to get around using invisibility because several of the party members had different familiars. Were we level 7 yet? Did we have the level 7 familiars?
I don't think you guys were level 7
I don't
yet
think so.
I think we
just had the basic familiars.
Or 5,
so
maybe?
Aryan Road had that means Gwydion the Fox instead of Rhiannon the Dwemer Cat. And that means that Cordelia had her thrush instead of Calazandrex, the fairy dragon.
Looking at sort of the expected levels here, the expected level is 5, and then getting to 6 just before you got to the Ladies' Light.
We
so
weren't,
you were
we
around
7.
there. You wouldn't have been 7.
We weren't 7.
Yeah.
And then Lucia. What was did Lucia have a cat that then became a Sylvan?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, so I think Lucia's cat had the best stealth in the party. And we made Lucia's cat invisible, and Lucia's cat went in.
An invisible cat is good for
stuff. An invisible cat, okay? So the invisible cat sneaked past, went through the barrier, came back, and was like, yeah, so most of them are actually horribly sick with an illness. There's still enough that are there to fight. They want to burn that barrier when you go up to it and attack you. And they're doing someone in the back, like she made it all the way to the back where there was clearly like the evil priest was like praying to a dark deity that Cordelia suspected it was Zevgavizeb, the demon lord of Zul'Gath, because these were Zul'Gath, and also the cat described the demonic sigil, and Cordelia identified it as the sigil of Zevgavizeb, the very most obvious choice for who they might be worshipping.
Yes.
So we had all that information in our back pocket, and there were also people who were like watching over the sick. So we determined that like whatever the case with these Zul'Gath, that like they didn't just like eat or like burn the sick bodies. They wanted to the sick people to get better.
Yes.
So we introduced ourselves as traveling plague doctors who, using Cordelia's knowledge of Draconic, which I believe is what Zul'Gath speak.
Yes.
So we were traveling plague doctors who were in the area when we heard that there was a very bad disease and that we were coming to offer free treatment for their disease. And we had heard that there was a disease, that there had been problems with the boggards, and that we were here to help them and support them with free treatment. So, you might think that, you know, if we offer free treatment, that they'll be like, okay, and like they'll let us in, or maybe capture us and make us provide the free treatment and be in a united front. That could still be a problem for us because they could surround us with the entire compound of non-sick people. But in actual fact, what this did was create almost immediately a schism amidst the Zul'Gath, because many of the Zul'Gath wanted the free treatment, but some of them who were the most loyal to their priest king and had not sort of like soured over to him, given the fact that he wanted to like just not care about the disease and was constantly doing things that got them killed and being a kind of horrible murder priest. Some of them...
One of the things that he did is he's like, oh yeah, you know, the way that we're going to deal with this is that we're going to take some of the sick and we're going to sick people, we're going to offer them up as sacrifices to the demon lord so that maybe eventually he'll stop this.
That's right. We'll just sacrifice the sick people. It did not work. So he had horrible policies, and so there were already like some Zul'Gath who were on the brink with this guy, and we were able to get immediately not just those, but a bunch of other ones who were like, yeah, of course we'll accept this. And this caused so much conflict amidst them when we tried to do that it almost immediately broke out into violence. And so the people who were in favor of letting us in were able to get to kind of knock aside the barricade so we didn't have to go through a burning barricade. And we got in, and they were kind of fighting each other, and we just kind of bypassed that using the cat's information about the whole layout, went straight to the priest king and defeated him to show that because his main supporters were like, yeah, but he's strong and he has the blessing of Zev-Gavazai, so he'll never lose. And therefore, if we don't follow him, we will just all be killed by the boggards.
So the solution to this is to defeat the cleric of Zev-Gavazai and prove that he is not, as he believed himself to be, an immortal son of a demon god.
That's right. We actually killed Uglio, or whatever his name was.
Ugolo.
Ugolo, okay.
Are we always, you guys call him Uglio?
We call him Uglio.
It's very similar.
We called him Uglio because that was almost his name.
Yes.
So we defeated Uglio, and we killed him because he was like, yes, we'll kill everyone, Zev-Gavazai.
Sacrifice everyone
sacrifice to the demons. Like, okay, and we killed him at that point. We managed to end the conflict with no other Zul'Gath killed by our party.
Yes.
There may have been like one or two who died during the time that they were fighting each other, but I don't even think so, because we like hightailed it over there, and Zul'Gath have pretty good like natural armor and their damage isn't that high, so by the time that we came back, they hadn't really defeated each other yet.
They have to, and because their damage isn't that good, they're not that likely to actually die right away. They'll have
Plus, they weren't like coup de grace, the ones that were down, since they were still from the same group, and they also were so evenly matched, they wanted to fight the ones that were still up, and they knew they didn't have healing.
Yeah, exactly. So,
like, I think that there were no casualties.
I think so too, but I think there were some people who were down that you then
there were, and there were some who were still very skeptical of us and still were like, no, Zev-Gavazai, because what we did, we talked to them, especially like the leader of the one who was in the faction of let the free healers in. And that particular Zul'Gath was like, oh yes, my mate has been captured by the boggards, and she might be in trouble. I hope she hasn't been killed. Boggards often also sacrifice things and are horrible. We said, well, we'll do our best to get her back if we can, but only it's in the gods' hands now. And Cordelia is a devout follower of Shelyn. It's like the goddess Shelyn might preserve your love, but we don't know what the boggards are going to do. So we also Cordelia and Lucia mainly, and not Margaret. Margaret did not try to convert these people to Tsukio, but the others tried to bring them towards a Sarenrae / Shelyn direction because they both followed goddesses of redemption.
Yes.
And some of the Zul'Goth were very skeptical about that idea.
Yes.
But when they saw remove disease was removing diseases, and that we were strong with what, like, it sounded like the idea of the power of love and redemption.
They're like,
was just like,
whatever.
that's weak, that's just gonna get you killed. But like, we beat their strongest guy.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh yeah, no, you're still, like, maybe he was distracted. So, but we had been talking to them, and there was like this other, like, lesser demigod that lived near them, apparently, that was called Gegenolog, who was apparently a powerful dragon with many heads, which Cordelia...
Sacred to Zevgavazeb, yeah.
Cordelia identified that this is probably a Hydra.
Yes.
So we were like, okay, well, you know, we'll show you our strength. We will, we'll negotiate with this Gegenolog. And so we went to Gegenolog's cave, and Gegenolog was very hungry.
Yes. And
decided to attack us, despite Memory of Dreams' attempts to negotiate. We managed to defeat Gegenolog and knock Gegenolog unconscious, and then Memory of Dreams brought a bunch of extra food to Gegenolog, who was, like, starving in there in the cave, and slowly gained the Hydra's trust and used Handle Animal to help get along with the Hydra.
And if during the battle with the Hydra had gone from being a 5-headed Hydra to having 10 heads.
Yes, that was rough.
Yes.
That's a thing that happens with Hydras. We didn't really have, because it was a Pyro Hydra, so our plan to burn the stumps did not work. And we had acid, but also Cordelia could have done acid splash, but first of all, that wouldn't have helped in the fight other than to get rid of the stumps. And second of all, we didn't really want to, like, permanently maim this Hydra. We were hoping to befriend it where memory was. So, it was kind of okay if it had no heads for a little while, then got 10 heads later, which is what happened. So, it was a 10-headed, 5-headed Pyro Hydra, he was, named Gegenolog. And Memory of Dreams made friends, even with the -5 penalty for Handle Animal on a magical creature. Magical beast that has animal-like intelligence.
Yes.
So, Memory of Dreams befriended Gegenolog, and Gegenolog was okay with Memory of Dreams riding on Gegenolog in exchange for lots of food. So we came back in riding on Gegenolog. At that point, many of the skeptics were convinced at least that we were very strong, even if, like, the religion we were talking about was still weird to them.
It's
but
like, let's at least, even if they didn't necessarily 100% believe you, it's like, let's at least play along with these people. And some of them are like, yeah, you know, actually they do have a lot of strength from this.
They completely understood the fact that we put the leader of the group that was in our favor from when we were trying to enter to heal them for free in charge after defeating the priest. And he was someone who was very receptive to the message of Shelyn. So they didn't, like, fuss about who we put in charge. Like, well, obviously you would put the person who was in favor of letting you heal people in charge during that battle because it's someone you can trust. So we figured baby steps with these Zul'Goth. And so eventually, though, we found out that also Gegenolog's cave connected to the complex, and Maru didn't know.
Yes.
So we actually had 2 ways to get to the Lady's Light. But we promised whatever the dude was who was the head of the Free Healing is Good faction that we would try to find his mate who was captured by the Boggarts. Like, we promised him, and we weren't going to break that promise. So we decided to, superfluously to the actual main quest, go to the giant Boggart village next.
Yes.
And figure out what we could do to free his mate. So we had a few options for getting to the Boggart village due to the fact that we could go through the caves that connect to the Lady's Light and the Boggart village and come out there by surprise. But we also could just go by overland. And from what we heard about the setup between the areas, I believe we decided to go overland first, I think.
Yeah, I think you were concerned that that with the tunnel approach that you'd be funneled into like a really small choke point,
Yes.
whereas if you went overland, you'd be able to scout out the surrounding area and decide.
I
what
think
the
that's
best
what it
approach
was. And that's where we found out that there were some divisions among the boggards as well by
Yes.
scouting that out. So first of all, boggards are a frog-like humanoid that they also are kind of horrible. They worship a different demon lord, Golgunta, the demon lord of boggards.
Mm-hmm.
And they have like a horrific life cycle where they have like tadpole babies that they sometimes like screw around with them. That
They put them in like this poison, and then like
they sometimes screw around with them in a way that causes them to become like unintelligent, weird other non-boggard creatures instead of maturing into a boggard or eat them. And like there's a lot of bad stuff going on with the boggards. But it turns out the boggards had their own system that was based on the fact that indeed the boggards had made a deal with the Grey Maidens, but if I recall correctly,
not before suffering heavy losses, which included losing their cleric of Gugunta, who was the only one who had healing.
Yep. And if I recall correctly, there was someone named Mama Babala who wanted to make the deal after obviously losing, but then the chief Daghop was like, no, we can't make a deal with them. They just killed our cleric of Golgunta.
Well, but he eventually agreed to the alliance, and he was like, okay, yeah. Because he eventually agreed to the alliance under duress, and is like, yes, well, they'll provide more aid. Okay, fine, as long as they provide aid like they were supposed to. But the Grey Maidens haven't come back to provide aid, so now he blames Mama Babala for causing this whole situation.
Mm-hmm. And did he and his people like split off?
Yeah,
and
they
like,
split
leave?
off. So they went to the cavern temple a little ways away, whereas Mama Babala and her followers stayed.
And the
in
cavern temple, I think, is what's on the way to the Lady's Light.
Yes, it is.
So we would have encountered Chief Daghop first if we had gone the other direction. Instead, we didn't. We encountered a giant village full of boggards.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we tried to use a similar scheme with the boggards. And the boggards had seen that and we knew that they had allied with the Grey Maidens, so it was like, at first we...
I mean, the fact that you had Gegenolog certainly opens up some possibilities.
We had Gegenolog. We also disguised... one of our characters, and now I'm forgetting if it was Cordelia or Arya, as a Grey Maiden, who we knew we knew that they were allied with, so they would know that they weren't supposed to attack Grey Maidens, and that caused like the regular boggards. Oh, it's those ones we're allied with. Okay, fortunately this was the group that still wanted to ally with the Grey Maidens.
But they were very much like, oh yeah, they were still desperate for resources from you because Babala knew that this schism was widening because the Grey Maidens hadn't been holding up their...
They brought us to Mama Babala, and she was angry and was like, where are the resources you promised them? Resources. Oh, the great Sorcerer shall rule over all.
Yeah.
Said, I think it was Arya. Said, Arya, won't you follow Sorshen? And the Mama Babala and the boggards were basically like, no. It's like, okay, then why don't you follow Shallan or one of these other deities? And we're trying to pretend to be the Grey Maidens, but actually try to use the foot in the door to... or, no, I guess that's the door in the face, where you give the more ridiculous one, and then you go for one that's less ridiculous to try to weigh them out when we found out that their main priest of Golgunta had been defeated. But what we discovered was that Mama Babala was actually, while she allied with the Grey Maidens, was just, like, horrifically terrible.
Yeah.
And had views that were pretty awful, that she thought maybe the Grey Maidens would share, and she shared them with us, about, like, murdering babies and wiping out all
these
of the
interesting
Zul'Gath.
things that happen if you tamper with them and make them into these other creatures.
And then we were like, well, maybe you could make peace with the Zul'Gath and then become even more powerful. She's like, no, we will wipe all of them out to the last member. So we realized that this was a problem, so there was no other solution. She was very devoted to Golgunta. She was not a cleric, but she was, I think, like a ranger, who was
faithful,
a ranger who was actually like a lesser priestess. As a ranger, she just didn't have spells yet, or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we killed her.
She was a favorite enemy reptilian humanoid ranger.
There was no other option. Genociding the Zolgath was just her compromise was like, yeah, maybe we'll listen to you about this Shallan and Sarenrae, but only after we genocide the Zolgath.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That was not an acceptable.
Yeah, we had to kill her. She was she and Uglio, and at least Uglio was a priest. Well, I guess they were both priests of demon lords.
Yes.
They were our first thing that we killed that did not have dash intelligence in Pathfinder First, or was a fiend.
Yes, that's correct.
Or was a fiend. Like, that was it. So we had to do that. But at that point, all of the boggards who were in the village were basically basic boggards, and they saw how easily we defeated Mama Babala, and we had Gegnolog, and they were just like kind of kowtowing, and we're like, just please
don't kill us.
Don't kill us. Tell us what to do, because they were used to being bullied around by a powerful figure. So this was an easy sell for Cordelia and Arya to try to manipulate the boggards into stopping being so evil. We found that actually the Zolgath's mate was still alive, but was planned to be sacrificed like super shortly after that. A miracle of Shallan's grace. There was a tearful reunion as we returned her back to the Zolgaths, and that is probably the moment when that one Zolgath who was listening to us and said that he would convert them to Shallan or Sarenrae actually maybe believed in Shallan just a little bit. That spark of faith. But we found out from the boggards that were there, even just from dealing with Babala, she was like, oh yeah, it's the Chief Daghop. She wanted us to kill Chief Daghop. Chief Daghop has tried to do an insurrection and is against you, and you're the Grey Maiden, so why don't you kill him?
Yeah.
And told us where he was and about how many forces he took with him, which was very kind of her. So,
I mean, she wanted you to go kill them, so she's very happy to help with that.
They were in a really, really heavily defended area, though. It had cover. They knew the surroundings. They were like some of the strongest warriors, and I think that like the chief was not a ranger like she was, but he was like a barbarian. And their plan was just like there was no approach that they wouldn't see unless you came like completely invisibly, and even then there was like water on the floor.
They had a situation with like broad caverns for fighting, but also narrow choke points that were well defended.
They were going to ambush and attack in that area.
Yes.
So that's why a boggard from the village came to them and told them that Mama Babala had been defeated by outsiders and her faction had fallen. And so, sure enough, Chief Daghop went out of that heavily defended area. He was expecting Babala would send people to kill him, and he was ready to fight them back with his smaller group of more elites. So they came out. They were going back to the village when that happened, and we ambushed them. And we gave Chief Daghop a chance, but he was, even though he was a barbarian and not like a priest, he was even more dedicated towards slaughter and murder. And like, no, I will kill you. If you offer me mercy, I'll show you that mercy is wrong.
Mercy is a lie. I will murder you all.
By murdering you and getting revenge and killing everyone else. So we had to execute Chief Daghop
because it was also clear that he wanted to kill many of the boggards back in the village.
For daring to be traitors. To him.
Yeah.
So that's definitely true. He was like, yes, I'm gonna kill everyone who spoke out in support of Mama Babala, which is like half the village.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had to go. But at that point, his elites were like pretty impressed that we kind of defeated their strongest guy, and they were at least willing to not do that. They were all willing to surrender. And so we had managed to defeat 2 entire, like, mini settlements worth of people and we only had to kill 2 or 3, Uglio.
Yes.
We only had to kill 3 of them who were super deep Demon Lord worshippers, and we tried to get them on the right track with Shallan as best as we could. And with Gegnolog, joined us for a while, but we started getting into like really narrow caves.
And it's not easy to take a 10-headed pyro
A
hydro,
huge
creature down in with you.
There were some that were 5 feet wide, and we couldn't bring Gegnolog. 5 feet wide for a while, so like even if we had a way to reduce it, Gegnolog, we couldn't bring Gegnolog. So we had we left Gegnolog with some extra food, and then continued deeper and deeper into the caverns that led to the Lady's Light, where we were attacked by these horrible albino cave Silifigids.
Yes.
They were terrifying. It was completely an ambush. It was like, these are just Silifigids. Why do they have all these abilities and things? It was actually not our group's favorite. We beat them. It wasn't as bad as one of the encounters that's coming up, which was really bad. But we still had to lick our wounds. And after defeating them, we found that there were some guardian constructs guarding a shaft that led down into the Lady's Light.
And you also discovered that there was a monument. You also discovered that there was a monument here that had a faint aura of enchantment left that seemed like something had broken free from it.
Yep, that was sketch. That something had broken free from the monument. That was not good.
Yep.
Yes, it was like some kind of like the outline, or like the missing outline of some kind of woman had broken out of it. So like that could have been Sorshan, but that didn't sound like what Cordelia had heard about Sorshan.
And also, it didn't look like whatever it was had gone deeper into the thing. It looked like they may have left.
Yeah. So
if anything,
that was all kind of sus. We eventually tried to figure out like, what are the conditions under which these guardian constructs attack? Because clearly, like Silifigids move in and out, whatever. There were probably a huge nest of them, but clearly these constructs are still fine.
Yes.
And the Grey Maidens have gone in and out multiple times.
So what have they done to?
Avoid getting attacked? And there clearly was a condition to not be attacked by them, which I am blanking on what it was, but Cordelia figured it out.
It was displaying the Rune of Lust.
Right. We tried a smorgasbord of seemingly obvious options, given that this was a Sorshan-related thing, one of which was displaying the Rune of Lust, and displaying the Rune of Lust worked.
Yes.
So
there are a little bit of trial and error in doing a runaround with these constructs.
I don't think they even activated.
Yeah.
I think. But you may be thinking of the time I ran it for you guys
and
Paizo, who did fight them and did not figure out about the Rune of Lust.
That's right.
But we tried so many things at the same time, including someone who was using a disguise to look like Sorshan. That was what... like, we incidentally got the Rune of Lust because Sorshan has, like, the Rune of Lust, if I recall correctly, is, like, scribbled in her cleavage or something like that. It's something like that. So, we did a bunch of things that we thought all could be ways to get through. Although we suspected being Sorshan wasn't necessary unless the Grey Maidens had encountered Sorshan before that point.
Yeah, because otherwise they
wouldn't have made it through the first time.
Also, just in general, like, if you have guardians on a location and you want anyone to be able to come and go that's not literally you don't want to
you don't want to make it so only you can get through.
You don't want to set it up so to encourage everyone to disguise as you.
I know, but constructs are rarely created so that throwing the kitchen sink makes it worse than trying one thing.
That's true. You might as well throw the kitchen sink.
So we threw the kitchen sink, and we managed to not have to fight the constructs. We managed to go down the shaft, which had both darkness and silence, so you couldn't really see or hear anything.
Your usual tactic of like throwing down a stone with light on it
did not work.
How it goes or when it lands. It's just like, is this a bottomless pit? Oh no, is this a bottomless pit?
No, but then we felt it landing.
Yeah.
Because we attached one to a rope.
Then you tried attaching one to a rope, and you're like, okay, well, I can feel that this isn't a bottomless pit.
But there was also, it was falling too slowly, because there may have been a feather fall in there, and there was some weird stuff. So the question is, do we want to do the Lady's Light dungeon in the next episode?
I think we do. I think this is
a good stopping point, because we were about to go into the Lady's Light dungeon.
We have just gotten to the point where we're about to start with Area K1 and begin the giant mega dungeon of this part.
That's right, which we are going to continue heisting and grifting our way, even though we are now in a mega dungeon, because that is what this group does every time.
Does a creature... can you communicate with a creature either through talking to them or wild empathy? If so, then let's try not to kill it.
We don't actually have wild empathy, which is part of Memory's
Yes.
problems. That's why he sometimes has
Oh,
to...
right, yeah, that's right.
He often
he's
has
a handle animal.
to do the shonen thing where he befriends them after beating them in
Yes,
a battle.
exactly. Beat them in a battle, and then you've got the montage of him befriending
Yes.
them. Yeah,
that's
right,
because he
right.
didn't have wild empathy.
Yep. It
Would have been a
useful
good
to him.
fit for him, but
It
he
would've been,
didn't
yeah.
have it. So let's say bye to YouTube.
Let's-
Bye, YouTube.
Bye!